I'm gonna get things started. And I know, Michael, you have a full slate of information to give us. So let's jump in. First of all, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you all for being here and taking time out of a busy workday to come to our guest lecture. My name is Siobhan Stiles. I am the director of Goucher's graduate program in digital communication, which is a professional degree focusing on media production and communication strategy, which Michael will be covering both of today. If anybody's interested in the program, please feel free to ask any questions at the end. So I'd ask that everybody keeps themselves on mute for the duration of the talk, and then you can unmute yourself in the last 5 or 10 minutes when we'll take questions. But our main event is a fascinating and useful talk called AI and Marketing and Communications, Opportunities, Challenges, and the Human Factor by Michael Tenati. Michael is the founder and managing director of Kinetics Marcom, a Maryland-based strategic marketing and communications firm. With over 35 years of experience, Michael has led transformative initiatives in product launches, service innovation, and organizational rebranding. Recognized as a catalyst for change, he has partnered with global leaders such as Procter & Gamble, Citibank, GE, ExxonMobil, and Sprint. Throughout his career, Michael has been at the intersection of technology and marketing. He played a role in pioneering efforts like GE's early dial-up services, Sprint's internet business solutions and mobile platforms, and the assimilation of biometrics in the travel industry. Michael, thank you so much for being here and for putting this talk together for us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Siobhan, and thank you everybody for coming to this meeting. I've got a bunch of slides. There's a lot of content to go through. To be honest, we could have several of these, and hopefully there'll be an opportunity. I've got my contact information at the end. If you'd like to reach out to me directly, more than welcome to. I'm going to see if I can share my screen with you because that's where the slides are. Can you all see my screen? Is it visible? No?
No, I can't see your screen.
Okay. Glitch number one. Can you see it now?
Yep.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. It's interesting as Siobhan, went through my little biography there and talked about being a change engine and integrating technologies. The reality is, literally, the arc of my whole career has been really integrating technology into communications and marketing. One of the things that I would tell you, and I'd point out in one of the slides, is that really for the last 40 years, technology has started to creep in and then became sort of a main driver for all communications. And what you're seeing with AI is just one iteration of a progression of technology. And one of the things I would tell you is that in 20 to 30 years, there's going to be new and different technology that's going to be driving, our careers and our profession. But let me start up and get into the presentation. Excuse me. One of the things I want to do is really sort of talk about how it's shaping AI currently. And I was telling Siobhan when we came on, it's changing rapidly. And I'm sort of surprised as I talk to people about how much of it's already been adopted and how much new applications there are for it. I'll be able to get into that. I did want to caution you and let you know that, to be honest, I'm not a computer scientist. I don't know all the technical questions. And I know that there are a lot of ethical issues and policy issues around data centers and the use of resources to drive a lot of the AI data centers. And that's not what I'm here to talk about. Really, what I want to talk about is, again, how the human factor is really sort of the linchpin to the successful implementation of AI. Now, a little disclosure for all of you. I did use AI to pull this presentation together. To be quite honest, I needed it to help me do some research. I used it for some brainstorming, and for sure, if anyone's ever worked with me proofreading, I use proofreading quite a bit to make sure that there are no errors. Interestingly, I'm not the only one who's been using it for all these purposes. Real quick, There's a study that was published in November of 2025 that showed that roughly 60% of people used AI regularly, and about 37% of those respondents claimed that AI was being used in their workplace. What I would note to you is that number is definitely higher now in March of 2026. This study was done in November of 25, which means they probably did the fielding of the research in September, maybe October even. And by the time they put it together, you're looking at 6 months of raw data. So the point is that I know for a fact that in those 6 months since November, the application, the use of AI has increased. I won't say dramatically, but it has quite a bit. Now, the premise couldn't have been better said than a gentleman by the name of John Pfeiffer, who is CEO for Oshkosh Enterprises. And what I loved about what John said is, and for reference, this is not the people who make the overalls and the baby clothes. They manufacture electric vehicles, autonomous, excuse me, motor vehicle units, and a variety of other sort of high-tech industrial products. And I love this quote because he says, "Man is a slow, sloppy, and brilliant thinker. Computers are fast, accurate, and stupid." And that hasn't changed, even though you hear all these stories about artificial general intelligence and, computers talking to computers and taking over the world. Those are really thought exercises. And I think even the people who started pushing those ideas out there have backed off on it. Fundamentally, there are limitations to what AI can and can't do, and its applicability. And a lot of it is driven by us. So let me get into the crux of the presentation and let's see how us, slow, sloppy, and brilliant thinkers, can use computers to be faster and more accurate. As I mentioned, new technology is a constant. The introduction of resources to try to make jobs efficient and more productive is something that upper level management has and always will be mindful of. The old joke was pick two, faster, cheaper, better. But now the answer, the joke is you have to pick all three, faster, cheaper, better. And the only way to do that is to find efficiencies where you can. And to be honest, leadership is always going to look for tools to help them reduce costs and elevate output. And if you wanted a proof point, roughly $3 trillion is expected to be spent over the last 2 years on AI. Now, it's going to be everything from obviously investments in chips, in hardware, in data centers. But I'm sure for excuse me, most of us in the workforce, you'll see that it's already integrated in, for example, Office 365, in Acrobat, in a lot of the Mac apps that are already out there. And you've got standalones like ChatGPT, Claude, and a whole variety of other emerging sort of branded chat bots. So the truth is that impetus, that's been driven by a $3 trillion investment is coming down the pike rather rapidly and with a tremendous amount of force. And I would make the point that you're not going to be able to avoid it. And being, frankly, a Luddite may not be the right approach to take as this happens. Now, what I want to be clear is that this is not about replacing humans. It's about embedding machine judgment into routine tasks. And I'll talk about that in a couple of extra slides on how I see that happening as we go forward. I wanted to really sort of emphasize that this is all part of that larger movement. Back in the 70s and 80s, the Japanese concept of continuous improvement became sort of a dogma that literally every US-based company has adopted. It's gotten to be so ingrained that no one really talks about it. But you'll see that most well-run organizations adopt some sort of continuous improvement process. They may call it Six Sigma. There are other names and branded names, applications for it. But again, almost every discussion at senior level, C-suite, is how do we make our process, how do we make our product, and how do we make our operations better through becoming more efficient? And you'll see on this slide, I've underlined the word process because that's where we fit in. Marketing and communication has a process. And what AI is going to be able to do is to help us with this process, to eliminate waste, to make us more efficient, and to frankly reduce turnaround times. Now, on the flip side of it, AI's autonomy is narrow. It can optimize, it can predict, it can simulate, but it can't do it on its own. It's all based on the inputs that you give it. Again, this is nothing new. The old, garbage in, garbage out. Your output is only as good as your input. Those things still hold true. And what I try to tell people, because AI, has got this sort of mystical, has sort of this mysticism around it. It's all it really is. It's the next level of, if you will, computer processing. Basically, what AI are machines learning patterns to mimic human intelligence, and they learn these patterns from data and making predictions. Again, if you take a look at how AI works, it'll take a look at a database. Let's say it's a bunch of emails that you've written. You'll say, I'd like to write an email to Goucher recommending a class on AI. And it'll sit there and only work within the confines of that database to put it together. There's a chance that you get the first draft and you say, no, wrong, 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 fix this, fix this, fix that. And then it's learned a little bit more and it tries it again, trying to predict whether or not it has addressed the question. And that's how it works. It works iteratively and it works based on the database. And something that I'm going to say several times is the beauty of that is it actually democratizes data analysis and also the inclusion of data in the marketing and communication process. I'll explain that later. Now, I do have a little prediction. I'm not much of a betting man, to be honest. I'm lousy at all the pools. I'm now in 12th place out of 15 in my betting pool. But one thing I'm pretty sure of is that the applications you see right now are going to be different 5 years from now. All of us who were around in 2000, those first wave of, .coms, 90% of them no longer existed after 2 to 3 years. But what emerged laid the foundation for where we are now with social media, with mobility, with literally crypto, bitcoins, et cetera, et cetera. So what I will say is that what you're seeing right now in terms of AI is just the beginning stages of it. And I think pretty rapidly, within 3 to 4 years, you're going to see a next wave, if you will, of AI innovation. So this is a field, an area that, you can't settle once you've brought in some tools and assume that they'll be fine for, the long term. You're going to have to keep your eye out for the next series of innovations. This is sort of a nostalgic pop culture reference, Danger Will Robinson. There may be one or two people in the audience who remember the old TV show called Lost in Space, about a family that traveled intergalactically. Will Rogers was the son, and there was a robot who usually warned it when there was danger, which invariably was usually an alien life force that was hiding behind a rock ready to kidnap Will. Every show was like the same way. The truth is, they do deliver real efficiencies, but you have trade-offs. And this is something that a lot of people bring up, and rightfully so. First of all, it can give you what I would call undeserved confidence. What happens is that you use it, you end up getting answers, you begin to take advantage of its efficiencies, it begins to free up your time, you begin to rely more on it, and pretty soon you're treating it like a commodity. The reality is that if you aren't paying attention, if you aren't actually going over the content, if you aren't reviewing the code, if you're doing vibe coding, the chances are it's going to make a mistake and you're going to miss it. And now what you've done is you've, in essence, polluted the pool of data and the predictability models that the AI is built on. So there has to be a constant vigilance as you use AI. You cannot get lazy with it. And then the other part of it is that it can de-skill work, reducing opportunities for human judgment and professional growth. Here's what I would tell you. If you work in an organization where AI begins to replace a lot of the job functions and you begin to see people are not acting by adding value, but simply moving one piece of paper to, from one desk to the other, simply typing in, prompts into AI, chances are that organization is going to be around for a while because the culture is all wrong. More than ever, when you have such a powerful tool that can take you into wrong places, you need to have an organization that's curious, that's vigilant, and that is always appreciative of the fact of the power of these tools to not only shape the culture of the organization, the culture of the organization, but also its impact on its products and services down the road. Again, simple terms said in italics at the bottom of the slide. AI is an enhancement. It's not a cure-all. A weak system won't improve just because you add AI to it. In plain language, if you're making a sauce and it doesn't taste very good, adding more spices isn't going to help it. Now, to the crux of what I'm talking about, the human factor, and I'll start off with the yin and yang of it. AI can enhance and accelerate the innovation process, and this is where the wonderful opportunity lies in its use. Part of it is its ability to strengthen data-driven decision making, and there's a reason why. You get back to the whole computers being fast and accurate. Computers are much better at looking at large databases, looking at large amount of information, and being able to process it and make some sense out of it. Again, you think about in Excel when you're drawing graphs, when you are looking at data analysis and you're looking for trend lines, things of that nature. And what AI does, it does this a lot faster. I'll mention him a couple of times, but my neighbor is an engineer, works at Hopkins, and he has told me by incorporating AI software, enhanced software, they've been able to reduce the time in terms of calculating whatever engineers calculate from several days to literally hours. That they've been able to take, projects that normally would have taken 9 months and now reduced it down to 3 months. Now, the beauty of it is that it really should spark creativity and the exploration of data. What I tell everybody is that if you work in a healthy organization that really truly appreciates it, there will always be the question of what if? And what I mean by that is that you're always looking at it iteratively. I was lucky enough to work at Citibank with a bunch of guys who were at the beginning of building out neural nets, which are basically they're still around. They're still an AI application, but in those days they weren't AI. And basically, we all sat around, their computer, their workstation, and kept asking it for scenarios. And that's how we were able to build a competitive advantage at Citibank versus our other banking competitors, because we were able to not only develop products that most people hadn't thought about, but we were also able to deliver solutions to customers and clients that, frankly, they'd been asking for, but unfortunately were hidden in the data and hadn't been revealed until you asked, what if? Now, from a practical basis, the curiosity and the data exploration should help you prototype faster. And I've talked to people, for example, in the Vibe who've done Vibe coding. What would have taken 5 to 10 days to do it now takes several hours. And the point is that now you'll be able to take a look at a greater pool of data and be able to ask it more questions and be able to do more modeling so that you've got a better solution for your customer. Continuing sort of on the same path, I've always defined our role as seeing the world through other people's eyes to create solutions. I think that's frankly what distinguishes great marketers and communicators from those who are average. The ability, for example, to see the world through a mother's eye who's trying to figure out what to provide her children in terms of toys or educational tools. A worker who's trying to figure out how to be able to increase productivity without laying off his workforce. A family that's looking to figure out how it can support its growing family when it needs to find home in an expensive community. It's our job to be able to see the world through other people's eyes and come up with solutions. I'm going to take a little tangent here, and it's a story some of you may have heard, but I think it best exemplifies when this is done at its best. Um, some of you may be familiar with the American writer Ernest Hemingway, a prolific writer in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Um, Really was one of the beginning, the founders of what was called the New School of Writing, which placed value on the economy of words and getting to the point very quickly. Where you had authors writing books that were 400 or 500 pages. Old Man in the Sea was 120. Um, Story has it that Hemingway, who used to go down to Key West, was sitting in the Sloppy Joe, which is a bar that's still there, and a young couple walked in. And they saw him and they recognized them, and they got into this lively debate and discussion about new writing styles and old writing styles. And one of them turned to Hemingway and said, "Look, if you really think that your writing style is better, I dare you, I challenge you to write a story, 6 words, and have it, mean something." So Hemingway, as the legend goes, sort of thought about it, accepted it. He got up, went to the end of the bar, stroked his beard, and if you've never seen him, he had an ample beard, and came back with a napkin, and on the napkin it said, "Baby shoes for sale, never worn." Now, any of us who've had children, or any of us who know people who are having children, or any young couple knows the prospect of having a child just solicits so much energy and excitement and joy. And you can only imagine that this young couple who got so excited that they went out and they bought the baby shoes. And then there was the tragedy. Something happened because the baby shoes were never worn. Now, that's a pretty powerful story and in it of itself. But from a marketer's perspective, where the brilliance comes in is the people who asked Hemingway about the story were a couple. And this was in the 50s, so he had to assume that at some point they were going to have children. And they were probably, thinking about having a house full of them. And so the story of talking about baby shoes never worn would resonate with them. I'm not saying that Hemingway would have written, Reese's peanut butter cups, for sale, never eaten, if there were a bunch of 12-year-olds. But the point I'm trying to make is that if you look at all great communicators, they have the ability to see the world through other people's eyes. Okay, so much for getting on my soapbox. Now to get back to some real practical matters here. There were really basically 3 buckets of utility when you look at AI. One is going to be research, one is going to be content creation, and then there's task work. I'm going to focus on the research and the content creation. In terms of research, I would say that there are basically 4 areas of research that AI is already being integrated and will continue to be integrated. One is survey design. There's an old adage, if you ask a person a question, they'll give you an answer. It may not be the truth. And so one of the ways of getting around that is creating adaptive design research, studies. And basically what that means is that the questions that get asked are based on the previous answers. So let's say you are a restaurant and you want to talk about desserts. You may say, you may start it on saying, when you go out to dinner, would you prefer to have ice cream, a cake, or cookies? And if I answer ice cream, the subsequent questions will be about ice cream. Do you like sorbet? Do you like frozen yogurt? Do you like, fruit in your ice cream, et cetera, et cetera? Because if I don't really have an inclination for cake and cookies, chances are I'm going to make up answers. But what you can do is you can get a better, more in-depth, more truer answers by using adaptive design. And again, you can use this in terms of surveys in research. Interestingly, the same technology gets used for just about virtually every customer service desk. Um, some organizations will allow a customer service rep to be independent as long as they stay within guidelines, but the vast majority will have fixed answers. And so what happens is if you call up and you've got a customer service desk, based on your questions and your responses, it will customize the answer for you in an effort to resolve your issue. So survey design and adaptive design is something that's already being integrated, and I think you're going to see more use of. Speed and volume, I talked a little bit about that. Yes, you're going to be able to crunch a lot more data a lot faster because these computer chips and these and the hardware that utilizes it just process a lot faster. But there's another aspect to this that I think is extremely interesting and exciting, and that is what I'm referring to as the democratization of data. Most organizations at this point have mined their database, fairly effectively, but it's there in a silo. They only know what they have in their database. They only know what they know. But in a world increasingly where people are understanding that there are connectivities and there are connections between organizations and situations, they need to find other areas of data. You'll hear some people refer to them as data lakes. Um, and let me give you an example. For example, in nonprofits and community wellness, if you are, let's say, the governor of Maryland and you're trying to address poverty, or your advisors may tell you, well, poverty is not just about necessarily about jobs, but it's affected by, disparities in education. It may be affected by location. It may be affected by housing. It may be affected by transportation. It may also be affected by food insecurity. All of these have a factor in terms of poverty. Well, if you were the Department of Labor and all you had were, information about income and Census Bureau data, you couldn't do the analysis to be able to verify that case and or build solutions that looks at a more integrated solution, if you will. You need to tap into the food insecurity databases. You need to tap into the transportation databases. You need to tap into the work, if you will, or housing. So all of a sudden, you've now quadrupled the volume of data that you need to look at. Now, what happens is that because AI is such a powerful tool and can process things so quickly, you're now able to all of a sudden create these links amongst all these different silos. So one of the things that I sort of anticipate is that now you're going to begin to see integrated solutions. And what I mean by that is solutions that understand, if you will, the continuum of what needs to happen to be able to address a person's concerns. I like to call it, if you're familiar with the story, if you give a mouse a cookie. For those who aren't, it's about giving a mouse a cookie, and all of a sudden it needs milk, and it needs a napkin to clean its mouth, and it's going to have crumbs, so you need to clean it. We're going in that direction, and I think it's going to provide much more satisfactory solutions for people. Sentiment analysis, it's already in existence. If you're unaware of it, basically it's scraping the internet looking for, uh, you know, sentiments, opinions, reaction on almost on a real-time basis. A lot of public opinion polls use it. A lot of organizations use it when they launch a new product, entertainment entities, and basically you can very quickly find out, did they like the movie? Did they not like the movie? What didn't they like about the movie? And all it is really looking at, all the volume and that of data that's coming out in social media and posts and blog sites. And again, while it's already existed, it's now going to get enhanced because of the power of the hardware and software and programming associated with AI. And then the last one is really sort of the predictive analysis. The holy grail in all the marketing has been right solution to the right person at the right time. Um, and we have gotten really good at figuring out the right solutions kind of to the right time, to the right person. And this is only going to take us a step further. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. But the ability now to more accurately predict and do it on a more granular basis is an opportunity area that AI is now going to provide us. This is an area that I'm very excited about. And it goes back to what I just mentioned about the three R's: right person, right solution, at the right time. If you look at any human relationship, we all size each other up and draw some conclusions. If someone walks in and they look like me, you draw certain conclusions about what I like, who I am, maybe even my political persuasions. If someone, one of you walks in, so let's say someone who's a little bit younger, there'll be other sort of notions that we all have. And in a lot of cases, you can be accurate. And what someone would talk to me about should be different from what someone talking to someone who's maybe half my age. That has always been one of the challenges. Now, granted, the truth be known that we've come a long, long way in personalizing and targeting. Not all of us have been, I'll call it victims of, what you see when you go on and look for shoes, and for the next 30 days, all you see are shoe ads wherever you go. You've seen, for example, uh, examples of it where, you might mention something and all of a sudden, you know, a day later that there's going to be articles, being sent through your feeds that are specific on that topic. So those types of personalizations are happening, but they are still fairly crude and they're fairly inefficient. And it's very limited the way it's being done right now. Because at the end, really, what we're trying to do is not only just communicate on a much more personal and targeted basis, but we want to come up with solutions, which includes product design as well as pricing. Now, this slide is if I present this slide, if I was meeting with someone at a C level and they said you have 3 minutes to convince me about the power of AI and its impact, this would be the slide I would show them. Marketers using AI for personalization, roughly 60% of marketers say they do, and this is based on a recent Salesforce study. Average return of investment improvement, 25% marketing ROI. This is an Accenture study. I know there were managers who would kill for a 5% return marketing ROI. Sales increase from personalization up 20%, Boston Consulting Group. Engagement rate 2 times higher. Conversion rate 1.7 times higher. Churn reduction, excuse me, less than a quarter. Customer satisfaction up by 30%. Revenue from recommendations. I brought this in there. 35% of Amazon's e-commerce revenue comes from recommendations. So when you go on Amazon, they're looking at your purchase behavior and all the other things that you have bought and all the other access they have to your data, and they're doing a very good job in personalizing what you're seeing on your screen. In terms of looking at organizations that are growing faster versus slower, 40% of those from faster growing companies come revenuers from personalization. And here's the kicker. This is all happening with 50% lower acquisition costs. This slide is, if anything, going to motivate just about every C-level manager to find a way to incorporate personalization in targeting. Again, it makes perfect sense. You don't want to waste your time talking to somebody about something you don't care about. You're interested in a solution at that particular time. So when you take a look, for example, at let's say my interest in what I want to eat for dinner versus somebody else's, there are so many factors that are aligned with it that it's very hard where we are right now to personalize it. But AI is going to be taking us to a point where you'll be able to do it. Now, again, how are some of the things that it's going to do it? One is it's going to do content. I mean, that's pretty simple. I mean, as much as I like to think I'm a Renaissance man, I mean, I have maybe 5 or 6 real interests. I probably spend my recreations doing 3 or 4 different things. I'm at a certain stage in my life that I need to worry about certain things, and there are certain things that I used to enjoy doing that I just don't do anymore. It's easy to target content. I mean, I think if you ever want to talk about targeting, go to a grocery store, look at the person behind you. Don't look at them per se, but just look at what's on the conveyor belt. If they've got Lucky Charms cereal and Cocoa Puffs and hot dogs and French fries, chances are there's a kid in the family. If you've got gourmet cheese and you've got endive and you've got let's say high quality olive oil, you probably have dual income kids or people who are health conscious. We all reveal, if you will, to marketers and to communicators who we are and what our lifestyle issues are by what we do and how we purchase, and a lot of that is already being used. Now, here's where the AI comes in. It becomes dynamic recommendations. And again, right solution to the right person at the right time. And what I think is really sort of fascinating about this is when you take a look at how we make decisions, that all of us come to pressing the button at different phases, if you will, in the decision process. Some come to it a lot faster and are ready to see and press buy. Some of us want to do a little bit more research. So what you'll see is the ability to figure out when's the right time to deliver the right messaging to you as you are in that cycle. I'll give you one quick example. I've got a good friend of mine who swears by this. She goes onto a lot of these e-commerce sites. She'll put something in the cart and she'll wait. And she'll wait and she'll start to get an email that said, "Oh, you've got something in your cart." She'll, excuse me, she'll wait and she'll wait for the next message that says, "You've got something in your cart. If you buy now, we'll give you 10%." And she'll continue to wait and until she gets the 20% discount she's looking for. So trust me when I tell you, with the integration of AI, that retailer is going to know that this is the game that she's playing and adjust it accordingly, which gets us also about how it can be used in pricing. This is a very controversial area. As a matter of fact, dynamic pricing in grocery stores is a very hot topic, and there's legislation in the Maryland State House right now to prohibit it. And basically, when you're looking at low margin industries, for example, like grocery stores, like most average retailers, where you're looking at 1 to 2% profit margins, you've got to be very, very efficient. So where dynamic pricing comes in is obviously pricing products on almost an hourly basis on based on supply, on if it's produce, spoilage, it could be seasonality. It definitely is location. What you pay in certain zip codes for certain items is a lot different than in other because they know demand is high, and in some cases you can pay for it. In hospitality, it's certainly true. For example, airlines know when there's more traffic coming out of your town or your city or your airport to various destinations, and they'll modify pricing accordingly. And there have been stories about how they also factored into it is your zip code. That if you're within certain zip codes and you've shown, a habit for pricing, you probably are a little less sensitive to prices than someone who may be in another zip code who doesn't really travel and has exhibited behavior that says they want to be low price, if you will. Um, the other two examples I'll give you are kind of interesting because they can also show how it can go awry. Uber is notorious for its dynamic pricing. If ask for an Uber, and we've all seen surge pricing. It's based on location. It's based on where the weather conditions. It's based on the availability of drivers. But now there are stories that Uber can also access the information about your cell phone, and it can see how much battery life you have. So if you are at a bar at 11:30 at night and you've got 15% power, they know you aren't going to get too fussy about what they charge you. So yes, there are going to be situations where you're going to see people try to squeeze more out of you because they now have information that tells you what kind of state of mind you're in. And that's a double-edged sword because if you're the product manager for Uber and you walk into your boss and you said, "I've increased profitability by 25%, you're going to get a promotion. As a consumer, not such good news. Now, one organization to take a look at is Walmart. And the reason I mention Walmart is they are the pioneer for everyday low pricing. You knew that they were, that's what they were good for, and you knew that you were always going to get the best price. Well, they're at a point, where they've squeezed as much efficiency as they can in the system. And there's a whole bunch of studies on how well they do it, and they do it really well. So now the question is to be able to increase profitability and sales, will they go to personalized pricing? Will they go to this dynamic model? And it's a major, major decision that they have to make. The other thing I would say is performance analysis. Um, AI can track content across different platforms. I mentioned the different data lakes. And so now you'll be able, again, if you are in one of those fields where you know that there are linkages between your solutions and other ones out there, now you'll be able to build those bridges. Um, this one, I mean, I think we're all familiar with because I think all of us who've already in communications use it. Yes, idea generation. You can use it again if you use it as a tool as opposed to a crutch just to generate new ideas, taking a look at a study and saying, hey, what haven't I, seen in this? And again, I wouldn't take it as gospel, but it may spark something. I've got hundreds of examples in my career where the most innocuous comment ended up, coming up with an incredible solution, and sparked a, if you will, a whole new product line or a campaign. Content outlining, yeah, I think, the reality is when I was in school, you did an outline and then you built, your argument out based on the outline. Nowadays, and I do it too, we basically throw out a bunch of ideas and then figure out if there's any logic to it. Reality is, if you ever take a philosophy course in logic, you'll realize that probably most of the time, no matter how logical we think we are, we actually don't think as logically as we should. And I think AI can help you with that. And then lastly is drafting. Now, when I was first started out, I had to take a class on dictation. And so basically you would dictate, the whatever memo or recommendation you were making. Someone would go to the stenographer pool, they would then translate it, from recording to typed word. You would take a look at it, you would correct it and fix it. Now, if you had a decent stenographer and someone you would work with, they knew what you were really trying to say. And many times they would kind of autocorrect and edit it. Well, that's no different than now. I do it all the time where I'll finish up a meeting. I need to get my notes out, but I'm driving. I'll hit dictate. I'll put in a Word document. I'll have Copilots organize it for me. And by the time I get back in the office, I've got something that comes pretty close to what was originally in my head. And I think that that's going to not only allow us to be more efficient with our time, but because you can do it so effortlessly, probably be a little bit more accurate in our recall. The other big area that I think applies to us is discovery and search. And again, this is a 2011-25 study, meaning it was information was compiled back in July and October, August and September. 42% overall population said they used AI assistance at one point during the course of a week for search. And the reality is those numbers have gone up. And as you would expect, when you're looking at demographics, people in their 30s and 40s, 18 to 29 typically are going to be heavy users. And as you get a little bit older. But here's what I think is the beauty of all this is because it finally takes us to a place where, again, and I'll use the word democratizes search. One of the fallacies of search was that it was easy, and that was farthest from the truth. We just finished up a campaign for a school, and we probably had, I don't know, 250 different search terms or search links because of all the different ways people search for information about schools. And it's because most of us, you're sitting there and you're looking at query, you're putting in a query, and you're kind of trying to, how do I put it in so many words? And is that what I'm really trying to say? And I'm only half thinking because I'm looking at television or I'm looking doing something else. And so if you've ever gone through it, it was sort of iterative and it was sort of a hunt and peck. And sure, over time we got a little bit better, especially if there was a subject area that you were focused on it, being able to type into the query box and getting the answer you wanted. And I always said that that was like accessing the world's largest library. And you kind of had to know the Dewey Decimal System. Again, nostalgic pop culture reference. Nowadays, what you have is your own subject matter expert. There was a search engine called Ask Jeeves, which tried to capture this. It ended up going out of business. But basically, this was this right-hand person to you. You could ask it anything, and it would give you an answer. Interestingly, if you look at the new Alexa ads, that's what they are trying to sell you. The idea that you've got this omnipresent, omniscient assistant there to assist you, and in the meantime, flatter you as well. And so that's where we're at, which means that your search queries are going to get better, which means people are going to have higher satisfaction levels when they use the internet to look for data. Now, what's happened is consequently, you're seeing what we refer to as zero-click results. And the reality is that no one has yet really figured out where this is going. Some people say it's dramatic, some people say it's only marginal. Zero-click results basically mean is if you buy a Google ad, no one clicks on it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't see your ad. It's just they didn't click on it because they looked at the search assist box. Something to note, something to pay real close attention to is AI assistants are not built with advertising in mind. The search engines were, they knew how they were going to monetize it. AI assistants haven't. So it'll be very interesting to see what the next iteration of these assistants look like. I'll go through this really sort of briefly. What a lot of people will tell you that, sure, you get zero clicks, but Search Assist is on top of the funnel. And what that basically means is it provides sort of the general information that helps people begin to form what brands and what product features that they're going to be looking for. Which means that if you've, excuse me, if your website and you've got enough digital content, you should see an increase in your paid search. I mean, you'll see a decline in your paid search, but your branded or organic search should increase. It's funny because it's kind of like, I'm not going to say zero sum equation where we've seen is paid search go down, but in the organizations that we know that are strong with their online presence, we've seen the branded and organic searches go up, which is a great thing. The other point is that again, because now these AI bots, and everyone's going to try to figure out, how do you know, decipher them. There'll be a cottage industry on that, by the way. Um, we do know that they go look at a variety of information because they can. So you're going to, see content on YouTube. You may even see events, which we've found for some reason tends to help the indexing on Search Assist. So more to come, but the old sort of models on how to beat the system or beat the bots probably is going to change. And again, we're going to have to adapt our campaigns from that. And I would begin to those of us who are managing it, warn your clients and your management team that we're going to have to go through a little bit of an adjustment, a testing period before we figure out really what the end state is. Um, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, except to say again that the only thing we know for sure is that strong content online is always going to index higher, whether it was the old way or the new way. And one of the suggestions we make is that when you look at your content on your website, that you make sure that it's you're using more natural conversation, and you're also thinking about the possible ways people might look for the information about you, and then also where you can, if you've got longer pages, adding a summary to it. And the reason why I say that is because when the indexing first started back in 2000s, the mantra was, oh, just mention the product attribute as many times as you can, delicious food, delicious food, delicious food. Well, guess what? At one point, Google figured out that you were trying to work around it and that no longer was viable. Um, I could spend an eternity on this. AI has been adopted very quickly by um, the wrong people. The number of financial scams, the bogus health claims, and celebrity misrepresentation. You don't have to be. I mean, it's there for everyone to see, and almost on a daily basis, there's an outrageous example out there. One of the things I tell people is, we all fell in love with CGI and because it makes these great Marvel movies and these great epics. Well, that technology, and again, using the word democratizes, is at our fingertips. You can face swap, you can voice clone, you can lip sync, and you can even do full body puppeteering off of your little MacBook Air if you want to. And obviously, this makes it hugely, hugely challenging for people who are doing search. As a matter of fact, one of the trends that you're trying to see are people doing sort of reverse searches. In other words, they don't really believe what they see anymore. So what they do is they'll click on an image and do a search to see if that image is real or if it's been manipulated. To that point, authenticity is a differentiator, and it frankly is sort of the underpinning. Um, I've been talking for about 45 minutes, and I'm not sure if you all believe everything I say. So I thought at this point I'd bring in Albert Einstein, who everyone recognizes as a genius and everyone believes in what he says. So, quoting him, whoever is careless with truth in small matters cannot be trusted in important matters. All consumers, anyone, looking to buy a product, anyone going on social media is mindful of that. And again, I warn people, there are going to be temptations. You may be forced, by your bosses or your client. Resist it because at the end of the day, it means you have one chance with consumers. And if you blow it, it's very difficult to regain their trust. So, is it a powerful tool? Absolutely. Is it a standalone strategy? Nope. But what it does do, it does, I mean, where I think we all come in is again, reiterating, beating a dead horse here, understanding the world through perspectives of others really remains fundamental to what we do and how we do it. Um, Creativity and emotional intelligence will always be one of our strengths. I mean, no one's going to be able to replicate that. And ethics and authenticity will continue to be drivers of long-term success. In sum, again, nostalgic pop culture. No presentation on AI would be complete without a reference to Terminator. This is the final scene as John Connor is saying goodbye to T-800. Arnold Schwarzenegger and John Connor is crying, and Schwarzenegger T-800 goes, "I know why you cry, but it's something I could never do." And I'm pretty confident in terms of predictions that AI and robotics are going to do a lot of things for us down the road, but the ability to see the world through other people's eye and to connect on human levels is something that no machine will ever be able to do. Um, we've got about 5, 10 minutes for questions. Anyone have any? Anybody?
I'll give people a moment to let all of that information sink in. While they're thinking, if anybody is thinking of a question, I just also want to thank you again, Michael, for giving us your time today and coming out here. And that was just a lot of valuable information and insights into using AI in the marketing business or industry. But yeah, any questions? I see there's something in the chat, which is a thank you.
I believe Jenna Oliver has raised her hand.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, for all of that information. You're right, it is a lot. We could spend days with you. How do you feel about the evolution of AI as an agent, the agentic era? I've been hearing a lot about that, and I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Well, it's been happening believe it or not, it's been happening since the 90s. And let me describe what I'm saying. When I was at Citibank, um, we were control freaks, and there were all these different touch points that we had with our customers. So we had built out a system of customer service reps, and the truth of the matter is the customer service rep was trained not to say anything that wasn't sitting on their screen. And we had created all these answers to all these different queries, and it went on for 20, 30, 40 pages. And, in those days, you'd have to look at an index and it wasn't as easy as it was now. So the truth was that almost 80% of the questions that they were answering were scripted already. The difference is, and obviously, as you know, with the evolution of agents, it's now, gone from, exporting them to countries with lower labor rates to now trying to find ways of using technology to replace those humans. So the overall strategy has been in place. And this is just, if you will, closer to the actual end state, if you will. And so my response is that the momentum to increase, that part of AI functionality is well in place. I think it's from what I've heard from friends, it's actually improved customer service and satisfaction. It's decreased costs. But yes, there's always going to be it hallucinating or giving you an answer that may be incorrect. But that can also happen on a human function. Um, so I think when you're looking at e-commerce in particular, you're not going to see less of it. You'll see more of it. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. I was just curious to your thoughts on it because I know there's a lot of evolution going on. So,
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the fast. I mean, look, the other thing is when you look at most organizations, they're trying to take labor out of the equation because, we've had retail clients, and what's the toughest thing they do? Trying to hold on to qualified salespeople. So the more you can, and if you look at the turnover rate in a lot of these sort of retail environments, you have to centralize it. And so even if you have a person, an analog being, chances are they are programmed to respond a certain way. So at one point, sure, does it make a difference if it's a bot versus a person? Probably not,
thank
regrettably.
you.
Anybody else?
We've got a couple thank yous in the chats. So again, thank you, Michael, for being here. Thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your workday to visit with us and learn about AI. Let me see. Yes. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday.
Thank you.